Hello people of the internet, it's Amanda, and for today's video, I'm here to talk about the film Ride or Die starring Mizuhara Kiko and Sato Honami. Now the thing is, this film has been much anticipated, I think partially because of the fact that Netflix has been pushing out a lot of Japanese drama and film content on the streaming platform recently, and given that J-films and J-dramas aren't really as accessible as other Asian dramas on streaming platforms before, so almost every single release that is of this caliber is much anticipated. I've seen the trailer of this before and it really intrigued me, not because of the queer theme, but because of the psychological thriller nature of it. And it's just quite interesting because I think the last project that I've seen Mizuhara Kiko in was Attack on Titan, like the live action, and that didn't really leave a good impression on me. I've seen more of her modeling works, which I was more impressed by. So seeing her again acting, I think that's also one of the reasons why I was drawn to watch this film in the first place. Now, the film is sort of like sensitive in nature, so we will be talking about those kinds of themes later into the video. But just to put it out there, this is based on a manga called Gunjo. I wouldn't be diving much into the details of that because, as always here on my channel, I do my reviews based on face value, meaning if you're someone who's not really into like the other details of that, like where it's based or anything like that, you just want to watch it as it is, like you see it on your queue, you want to watch it, you want to know if it's worth watching. So that's the approach that we're going for. And yeah, so this is my perspective of it as a viewer who clicked on it mainly because of what I've seen in the trailer, and that's that, not because I know any of the source materials or anything like that. So that's the approach that we're going with today. Other than that, so I'll try as much as possible not to spill spoilers as well or any pivotal scenes in the narrative, but I will still talk about, you know, my thoughts on the entire thing in general. So if you're into that, then please keep on watching. Now, the story kicks off with the character of Mizuhara Kiko, Rei, who walks into this neon-lit bar, and, you know, she's beautiful, she's in her 20s, and it looks like, you know, she's just looking for someone to spot or spend the night with or something like that. But there's something about her presence in that particular setting that feels like she doesn't really belong there. I'm not sure if that impression alone is because I've seen the trailer of the film, or it's just there's something about the way that she moved in that particular entrance scene that made it feel like, you know, even if she seems like she belongs in that kind of scene, that's not really her thing. She looks like a fish out of water, but not necessarily in a sore thumb kind of way. Then she spots a guy in the bar, she buys him drinks, and then, as expected, it leads to them leaving the bar and, you know, going to his house to do the deed. This is the point in the video where I have to tell you that there's a lot of nudity in this film, but the way that nudity is always presented, it's not necessarily the whole like sexy type, if you get what I mean. Like, we're not even like 15 minutes into the film and there's nudity, but at the same time, there's just something so vulnerable and scary about the way that it's always being presented, that doesn't make this into just a film about two women falling in love and being subjected to the male gaze. So I'll dive deep into that later, but just to put it out there, within the first 15 minutes of the film, you'll see it. You'll see it. Now, in the sudden twist of events, so she pulls out a scalpel and axes out the dude. And then we revert back to what actually happened or what compelled her to do what she did. Because it's not exactly the cleanest act. You know that she did it out of spite and contempt and without really too much planning. And then we revert back to, we see her, and apparently, like, she's a successful plastic surgeon. She has a girlfriend who's kind of like nice and quirky and everything like that, but she suddenly drops everything after receiving a phone call from Sato Honami's character Nanae. Here we find out that they were acquaintances 10 years ago, and it wasn't really clear at first what their relationship was. It's just that just through a single phone call, Rei drops everything and goes to Nanae. Initially, it seems like they are together, but apparently we learn that it was Nanae's husband that Rei killed earlier on into the story. And again, here nudity is used in this particular part of the film as well, but it's not the sexy type, because we see that Nana is full of bruises and that she is being abused by her husband. Thus, the her asking for help from Rei. It became evident that initially the feelings of Rei was unrequited or one-sided throughout this entire thing. And when we flash back to when they were younger, and it seems like, it was really more of Rei having a crush on Nanae. And there's this entire theme of social and internalized homophobia that was laced into the story of these two young girls who are now currently in their late 20s, who are still trying to navigate into their feelings and their emotions about the entire thing. Now, with that said, so given the circumstances, they were sort of on the run. It definitely gave me a lot of Thelma and Louise feel when that happened, because they rode Nanae's convertible, things, blah. They sort of escape and stuff and anything. So it's really more of this on the run narrative the entire film. But what's interesting is as much as there are highs and lows in terms of the tension in the film, and there's a push and pull thing here as well, because again, Nana and Rei, they're not really together. You don't really know exactly what Nana wants from Rei, or it's sort of a parasitic relationship. It's really toxic to some level, but there are levels of vulnerability that is being shown in the narrative that is very unique to their own experience. And it has a lot of highs and lows again throughout the entire film, and it feels like it's fluctuating over and over. So I'm not sure if it's just me, but while I was watching it, there was a sense of, it's not really whether or not I was worried as to if they're gonna get caught or anything like that, but it's really more of me trying to figure out if they're going to end up resolving this confusing feelings that they have, especially for Nanae's part, because it seems she's just stringing Rei along all over again. And yeah, and I felt for Rei's girlfriend, which she just dropped, based on Nanae's phone call, there's something there that was really beautiful in the way that girl's story was presented, but at the same time, it wasn't really that fleshed out for me to care too much about it. But still, I think I ended up crying in some of the scenes, because there are very beautiful moments in this particular film. It's just that everything, just when you think it's heading somewhere, there's sort of going to be very mum moments in between that you lose the momentum, and then something's gonna happen, and then it's gonna raise momentum again, that's going to disappear. So yeah, I mean, overall it is a good story. It doesn't necessarily make it into a film where guys would just drool over seeing two girls doing what they do or being sexy or whatever. It's really not that kind of film, in my opinion. And again, going back to the topic of nudity, there's something raw and painful every time you see it. It's not just for the female characters of the film as well, but it's really not the type where because throughout the entire film, you see Nanae, she's all purple all over, and even Rei, like there's something about her that feels very fragile every time. So it mimics some sort of like vulnerability into the film. It doesn't feel unnecessarily overly sexualized in that way. Even now, another question is whether or not they're finally going to do it, because I think that was also one of the pivotal moments back when, in the flashback of back when they were younger. Rei wanted to do it with Nanae. That's why, you know, it's that complicated type of thing. And there's also the topic of like social class, whereas Nanae was sort of like stuck into the circle of being in abusive relationships that started even back when she was younger with her father. Whereas for Rei, she's always had this level of affluence in her, being the rich girl who couldn't come out to her parents. And they both have these like struggles, but it's not really made into a caricature. And it's really sort of like it's being thrown into our face in a way that, you know, we see that's why these two characters are broken in their own way. I feel like it's sort of like romanticized the crime part of the narrative, for us to really zoom in or to push us to care for these characters, which to some extent I feel like it depends on the viewer whether or not they would. But overall, I think that there are parts of this story that was overstretched in a way. Like at times, just when I feel like I'm feeling something, it would decline. It would feel eh. In terms of acting, I feel like the two leads definitely did a good job in terms of showing different faces and different aspects of their characters in this film. It's just that I wish that the moments that were used to sort of like create subplots or anything like that were just used to create more layers to their character or to give them more dimension. But other than that, like on the surface, acting wise, I think both of them, both Honami and Kiko, did a really, really good job in their portrayal in this film. Whether or not it's like, I like how in terms of cinematography, there are parts that are super like crisp, super dreamlike, which fits this illusion that they're trying to live in. But in terms of the more realistic parts of the story, where you see the darkness of each of their characters and stuff like that, the gritty camera work comes into play, and that sort of like balances out, you know, the realism versus the illusion of what they're trying to like portray in the story. And overall, I mean, I think this is a film that definitely depends on your palate, whether or not you're going to like it. I personally think that it's an okay film. Like, it's not something that I would recommend to every single person that I talk to. Given the 2-hour and 20-minute runtime, I feel like that's super long. It's just that some of the subplots were there and it wasn't utilized properly. But overall, as a whole, it is a nice story. Yeah, but just that. So, yeah. Now, with that said, so are you planning to see this movie? Have you seen this film? Tell me down in the comments below what you think. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you're new to my channel and you would want to hear more from me, please hit subscribe. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I hope to see you again soon in a new one.